What is MTSS, which is short for Multi-Tiered System of Supports? I'm going to go over it today so you understand this, especially as a new teacher. And we're also going to go over a practice test question that you might see on your teacher certification exam regarding MTSS. Let's get started. So if you're trying to become a teacher, you might see things on your teacher certification exam regarding multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS. And if you are a brand new educator, this might be completely foreign to you. Now, you will see concepts around MTSS definitely on any special education exam, but you might also see them on early elementary education exams and other exams that have to do with intervening or providing interventions for students. So let's first go over what is MTSS. So again, MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports, and it has replaced the old RTI, Response to Intervention, in a lot of states. Not all states, but in a lot of states. And basically, it is a step before putting kids in special education. We don't want to just say, oh, he has a learning disability, throw him in special ed. Oh, she's struggling, throw him in special ed. We don't want to over designate students with special ed classification. Number one, because they might not belong in special education. And number two, it's costly, it takes a lot of time, and these kids just might need some interventions in the general education classroom. Now, other kids might need to go into special education because they have exceptionalities that require more nuanced approaches and more specialized approaches. But other students might just be struggling a little bit, and we can help them in the general ed classroom. So that's why we use MTSS first, which is a system of supports we implement before we move anybody into any kind of special education designation. So MTSS has 3 tiers, and these are all just about strategies inside the classroom. The first tier is strategies that have to do with all students. So these are just your good old-fashioned strategies that every student is going to benefit from. So for example, activating background knowledge when they are about to read something. That is what we do with all students. Maybe slowing down and using explicit systematic instruction. That is something we do for all students. We might also use some scaffolding techniques in reading or in math. Good for all students. So first tier, everybody gets it. It's good for everybody. The second tier is going to be a little bit more specialized for students who struggle a little bit more. So for example, you might have a group of students who are having a really hard time with their fluency. You might separate them out temporarily and work with them in a small group while the rest of the class moves on to something that they can do as an anchor activity. That would be considered a tier 2 intervention under MTSS because you're giving it to some students, not all students. So you just might have a few students who struggle a little more, maybe with their math facts, if you're a math teacher. Maybe in science reading, they have trouble with some of the more complex vocabulary and things like that. So some students get that next tier, tier 2, of the MTSS interventions. And then tier 3 is very specialized interventions. Now, I'm going to use a behavior example. So let's say that you have some students who are really struggling with behavior in the classroom. You've tried tier 1, which are behavior strategies for all students. You've tried tier 2, which is behavior strategies for some students. Now we're going to go into tier 3, which is strategies for very few students. This is the step right before we refer anybody to special education. We want to really hone in and focus on these students who are having trouble and give them the interventions they need for their specific needs. And so this could be anything from tallying how many outbursts a student has, and then going over those outbursts with the student later and kind of talking about strategies to reduce those outbursts. It might be some sort of calm down period where you have a student who's getting very activated or animated and having a hard time, participating quote, normally in the classroom. So you might have that student go to a calm down center where the student might be able to squish on a stress ball or do some deep breathing or things like that. These are strategies that very few students need, but using these strategies might work for these very few students where we would not have to put them in special education for behavior. We can just make sure in the general education classroom that we use these very focused, very specific strategies for these students. Now, beyond that, let's say that that doesn't work. The student is still struggling. Now it might be time to call in some experts in special education. So we've gone through the MTSS, the 3 tiers, the first tier for all students, second tier for some students, third tier for very few students. These 2, 3, maybe 1 students are still struggling and can't kind of engage in the activities with the general education classroom. Now we move into the pre-referral process where we are actually saying, okay, special education might be the next viable option for this student. But notice MTSS we did first. And MTSS is something that we all do as general education teachers. Now, on the exam, you're going to be asked questions about MTSS, especially if you're taking a special education exam. So let's go into my presentation so I can show you this in context and you can see how it works out on your certification exam. Okay, so this is an item from my 5355 study guide. This is my new special education study guide. And it's a rather big item. And I want to go through it with you because it hits on all kinds of things that you want to be on the lookout for, especially when it comes to MTSS. Now, normally I would tell you to work backwards and read the answer choices first, but this is a choose all that apply. And I need to have an understanding of the question stem at least. And I can see that this right here is relatively short. So I'm going to read the question first, even though normally I say read the answer choices first. Let's have a look. Which of the following happens during the pre-referral process of an English language learner being considered for special education? Choose all that apply. All right, couple of red flags here when I'm thinking about English language learners for special education. Are there English language learners in special education? Absolutely. We have students who are struggling to learn the new language, and they also need services in special ed, 100%. However, do we sometimes overrepresent English language learners in special education? Yes, and this is something we want to avoid. Remember, learning a new language is not a disability. Now, you might say, of course it's not a disability. When we are in the day-to-day, we might see somebody struggling and we might automatically think, oh, that person might need special ed. We're bogged down. We have lots of students. There are thousands of kids in the school. Sometimes English language learners are overrepresented in special education because we mistake their language process with a disability. So on this exam and others, be on the lookout for that. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure we're using things like MTSS to provide strategies in the general education classroom before sending people to special ed. This is like a little barrier to special education because not that special education is bad. It's just that we don't want to have a lot of kids in special ed who don't need it. And that's where MTSS and RTI, used to be called RTI, come into play. So let's have a look at the answer choices here. Remember, we have to select all that apply. And here's an important factor. You have to get them all correct to get the item correct. You cannot get 2 correct and get some credit. There is no partial credit. You must get the entire thing correct in order to get the points, just so you know. All right, let's have a look at A. Teachers use RTI or MTSS to support the student in the general education classroom and to see if differentiation will help the student. Yes. MTSS is multi-tiered system of supports. It's used in the general education classroom, and it's where we support students with the tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 interventions before ever considering special ed. And remember, MTSS is the new RTI. They're both very similar. MTSS is a little more nuanced, but they kind of do the same thing. Response to intervention, multi-tiered systems of supports. It is a step before designating somebody to special education. B, teachers and specialists determine if the student is experiencing language barriers to avoid misrepresentation. Yes. Remember, This is part of the pre-referral process for special education. We want to make sure that the ELL is not just having a hard time learning a new language, which is difficult, which there are barriers. And we want to make sure we don't just throw everybody in special ed. So B looks good to me as well. C, teachers and specialists gather a team to draft an individualized education program for the student, an IEP. That's moving too quickly. We're in the pre-referral process here. Pre-referral means we're not drafting any IEPs. IEPs is like the kids in special ed. We want to try to avoid special education and make sure that this student doesn't just need some quick interventions in the general ed. If the student does need special ed, then we go into the referral process and then an IEP is drafted, and that will help the student further. But if the student is not special ed, we don't want to put the student there. So I'm not going to choose C. I'm going to cross that off there. D, teachers and specialists monitor the student, gather quantitative and qualitative information, and analyze the information. Yes, that's part of the MTSS process as well. We're constantly gathering quantitative numbers and qualitative observations to see how the student is doing after we implement some of these tier 1, tier 2, and even tier 3 interventions. So D is looking good. Yes, we're gathering data. We don't just throw people in special ed. We gather the data. We analyze it to see if special education is indeed what the student needs, or if the student just needs scaffolding and interventions in the general education classroom. So right now I have 3, A, B, and D. Let's have a look at E. Teachers and specialists place the student in special education classes temporarily to determine if it will help them. We don't do this. No. Special ed is not a temporary thing. Special education follows the student through their academic career and even into college and even into their career. They can advocate for their accommodations in their career settings as well. So this is not temporary. We do not use special education as a temporary placement. Absolutely not. E is out, making A, B, and D the correct answers. All right, so that's how you can use your knowledge of MTSS to pass your teacher certification exam, especially in the special education certification exams. You will see MTSS and RTI, although RTI is being phased out on your certification exams. So I hope that clears things up for you, what it actually is, and also how we use it in a scenario on the test and in the classroom. Now, let me show you where you can get some of our resources that go even more in depth for your teacher certification exams. Just hop on over to KathleenJasper.com, as you can see here, and we have tons of study guides, online courses, and everything for you to pass your exam. So the study guide that I was just looking at in this video is our Special Education 5355. This is a relatively new test, and you can see we have a full study guide here. We also have an audio course that goes with the study guide that's a really great companion with the study guide. So if you're someone who likes to learn, through audiobooks or podcasts and things like that, this is a great combination here. We also have it on Amazon if you prefer a physical copy, and you can see a lot of people have found this book, we just published it, to be helpful for them in passing this exam. It's packed full of information, lots of practice tests and practice questions. This is a great book here. Now, beyond that, we have free webinars. Of course, I do every Saturday, give or take, where we go through free webinars with free study guides, little mini study guides to help you with all of your certification needs. And you can check that out under the free webinars tab. We have even more audio courses here, teaching, reading, leadership, and all of that. And then, of course, we have online courses. We just published the teacher interview course and the school leadership course. These will help you with your interview if you're looking for a new job. I was an assistant principal and I hired lots of teachers, so I know what they're looking for when they are hiring you. And also online courses, from everything for elementary education on. You can check those out here. All right, so I hope that helps you today with questions regarding MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports. If you have any comments, go ahead and throw those below. It'll be our pleasure to have a look at those and answer those. Consider subscribing to this YouTube channel and giving this video a thumbs up. I will be back soon with more information. Good luck on your teacher certification exams and good luck in the classroom. Have a great day.